Welcome to the Inspired Action Podcast. This is where we have motivational, inspiring conversations and interviews that we hope you'll enjoy listening to.
Join us and other inspired actioneers on this alchemical, transformational journey.
Welcome back to the Inspired Action Podcast. My name is Jay, and this is Pod 136, and we're back today on this podcast to talk about our Season 8 topic of the 13 Ghost Points. And as always, I have my co-host with the most, Lita Herman. Come on down.
Welcome back, Inspired Actioneers. And yes, we are still talking about the 13 Ghost Points and about how you can be living your life more authentically. And we're looking at the ghost points as themes for your life rather than physical points that you would use in an acupuncture session, because we recognize that many people think that it's the physical acupoints that are doing the treatment. But that's the mystery of the ghost points. You can certainly do large intestine 11 as a regular primary channel acupuncture point, but that doesn't make it a ghost point unless you understand how to activate it. So the first step along that path is to cultivate your own shifts around these themes in yourself as a practitioner, as a patient, as just doing self-cultivation for yourself before you attempt to do this point for anyone else.
I really think that's important, Lita. And I think that anyone who's listening is probably acupuncturist, acupressurist, energy worker. So it's, and they often know all the points, but really we always talk about cultivating each point in the 13 ghost points.
So this series is for anyone who, you don't need to be an acupuncturist to get a lot out of this. This is about self-cultivation for everyone. You don't have to be a Chinese medicine practitioner. These are fundamental concepts for everyone. So, we're trying to get you to think of these as themes rather than points in an acupuncture protocol.
I like that. That sounds really nice.
Yeah. And in our last episode, Pod 135, we talked about ghost pillow and ghost bed, how your sleep and your unconscious can be affected by trauma and negative life experiences. Now, in this episode, we're going to talk about two of our favorite topics represented by Ghost Market and Ghost Cave.
Yeah, I love Ghost Market because when I'm working in the coaching or the strategy world, it's how I often see how people how they talk about themselves, how do they speak about what they do in the world, and so I think Ghost Market is really important to get that sense of how do you speak about yourself in the world.
Yeah, and Ghost Cave is basically the void of the heart, the space inside the heart, which in Chinese medicine, the theory is the actual immaterial space inside the heart is your actual heart, and the walls of the heart are the pericardium. So the cave is the inside, and that's what we're going to be interested in today.
Yeah, so we're going to get to that in a little bit. Before we get into that, let's just, we have a special event coming up in the Alchemy Learning Center, and we are going to do a live webinar in February 2025. So if you're listening to this in real time, woohoo, you could still come. If you're listening to this afterward, you can watch the replay, maybe. We'll see. It probably will be in the Learning Center available if you're a member of the Alchemy Learning Center.
Yeah, and the webinar is about how you can access the void of your heart. So it really relates to this topic of the podcast today. It's this critical piece that you have to learn in order to work with the ghost points as an alchemical healer.
Yeah, it's very exciting to be able to access the void of your heart. And so this webinar is free to all of our Alchemist and Training members in the Alchemy Learning Center. But you are invited. Sometimes we do guest passes. So we're going to do a guest pass for this webinar in February. So check it out, alchemylearningcenter.com.
And I like to say, if you don't know about the Alchemy Learning Center yet, it's basically a community, a place where we can meet others interested in these same topics and share our thoughts and ideas. And these live webinars are key to that community sharing.
Yeah, I think the sharing and the caring and the meditations and all the great, wonderful things that people bring to each session. It's just amazing. And it's just a really cool way to learn how to do this work.
Yeah. So we hope to see you there if you're interested. And Jay,
if you want to learn how to get to the access of the void of your heart.
Yeah,
no simple task,
no
right?
simple task.
But it's easy.
Yes.
Yeah, what else you want to talk about?
And let's just talk for a brief moment about our next episode so you guys can get ready for it because it relates to this topic as well, the concept of the heart. We're going to be airing an interview that we did with Keith Parker from the Future of Wellness podcast, formerly called the Field Dynamics podcast. And we're going to be talking about fields of energy in healing, especially how they relate to the heart. So that's going to be in episode 137.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. And we'll do a little bit of a talk before that. Lita did that interview with Keith, and it was really fascinating. So that'll be coming up probably the next podcast that you see after this. So if you find it wherever you listen to your podcast. And if you can rate and review this podcast, that would be fantastic. Apple, Google, Spotify, wherever you listen to it, just give a little shout out if you like it for any moment of any second of any of the 136 podcasts that we've done. That would be a big shout out to us because it really helps other people all over the world find this little podcast.
Yeah. And remember, we have 2 podcasts now. We have 5 Element Fridays, which is growing in popularity. So check that out as well.
Yeah. We have more than 5 listeners, even though it's 5 Element Friday.
Yeah.
We have a lot of listeners that people are kind of getting into it. And we also have Meditation Mondays. And we have lots of stuff we're adding to the Learning Center all the time. So stay with us. We got a lot going on. And we'd love to have you with us. So, all right.
Okay. So let's come back to this idea of ghost market, Jay, of the market. I love this simple word. The word market is something that everyone around the world has experienced and understands. Going to market. It's a word that's been used since ancient times, and it's a place where we can offer to our community our unique gifts, like the fruits of our labor. And these gifts might be related to maybe your career, or they could be a hobby, or there might be something that you just give freely all the time, like a simple smile or a kind word. And so we often think of it as career related. So you could say it's part of the career palace because, we manage to discover in our lives, hopefully, that we have these natural gifts. And if we're lucky, we've tied that into what career we chose. So even if you're retired, let's say, and you're not, quote unquote, working, you could still be offering these gifts. You might feel like those career days are over, but you still have these gifts.
Yeah, and for the 5 element people listening, that would be the water element.
Yeah,
related
the career
to
palace.
The career palace, and also the wisdom palace, which kind of like if you do things and you have a life and experience, you gain wisdom. And so the water. So if you have
and that
water,
can be related to what you give.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So even though you might not have your gifts like out in the world because you may be retired or semi-retired or just not doing what you used to do, you can help volunteer. You could help with the grandkids. You could help your neighbors. There's lots and lots and lots of things you could do if you start to think about what you have to offer. Sorry about that.
No, that's perfect.
What you could take to market.
Right. And you might feel like your job isn't really utilizing your natural gifts, like there's a mismatch there. So if that's true, there's still other ways to bring those gifts out in the world. So regardless of your work situation, you can ask yourself, what are those gifts?
And I just had a thought later so talking about ghost market. And what if you help design a market in your neighborhood?
There you go.
If you don't want to do anything, help design a, farmer's market or, some kind of Goodwill market or something with your skills. Because I'm sure everyone has things to offer.
Yes, that sounds like a wood person solution to the market.
No.
Okay.
But if you need a challenge, why not?
So this requires some thought, especially if the gifts you might have been formerly bringing to the market don't feel like your true gifts.
I didn't say I really thought about that. I just came to my mind. Like, hey, market, make a market, create a market, go to the market. I don't know. Stock market. I don't know. Lots of markets out there.
So as part of this idea, I always like to think about this postal clerk who really loved his job. He was just in love with being a postal clerk. And he knew that his gift wasn't actually selling stamps or, whatever they do with packages in process the packages. And what the job entailed wasn't the gift. He knew the gift was to make each person's day a bit brighter. And that's what he offered every day. It was the smile, a short conversation, an upliftment. So you might not be thinking about your gifts that way.
Also maybe reassurance that, now it's in our hands. We'll take care of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. So, if you just think about what you have to offer, and it might be way more than you really have give yourself credit for. So if you're thinking about things, what could you truly offer to the world that is very unique to you?
Yeah, and this is where it gets tricky. Some people have a hard time being generous with how they look at themselves. They might want to criticize or point out to themselves all the negative things that they think about themselves and thus the supposed gifts. So this exercise is kind of difficult if you're feeling super negative about yourself. And guess what? That negativity is going to come out in the way you speak about yourself, like denigrating yourself, apologizing for not being better. It's almost, don't you think, Jay, it's like a societal norm that we don't say positive things about ourselves? Like we're so afraid of bragging that instead we say bad things, either because we believe them, which is possible, or we just don't want people to think we're conceited.
And I think that could be also in the fire realm a little bit, and maybe the earth, if they're not feeling like things are fair. And I do think that since we live in such a wood culture, we're like, go, 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 that this could definitely happen to a lot of people.
Yeah.
So it isn't so much about bragging, and it's definitely not about speaking badly about yourself. It's like, how can you really see yourself?
Yeah.
How do you see yourself?
Yeah.
And then how do I know there was an exercise a couple years back that went around on social media where you asked 10 people to tell them a couple sentences about yourself.
Yeah.
So you asked your family, you asked your neighbors, you asked your workers or people you work with, and then you looked at what were people thought about you.
Yeah.
I don't know, put it through that lens maybe.
Yeah. And I like to say that no matter what, we believe that every single person has precious gifts that the people in the world, some of the people in the world actually need. Not everyone, but there are people in the world who actually need those gifts. And then if you're hiding them or speaking badly about them, the people who really need them, they're not going to find those gifts.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said hide, because if you're not in the bragging or the, tooting your own horn, I say, tooting your own horn, that sometimes people just hide their gifts.
Yeah.
I see that a lot.
In this exercise today for homework, you're going to start asking yourself, what can I say about my gifts to the world that would help those people find them? And just remembering that you're not trying to convince everyone about your gifts. You don't have to convince anyone about your gifts.
We're just trying to look at your gifts right now. I know we're kind of saying it over and over, but we're just trying to get this point across.
But if you speak about your gifts in a non-judgmental way, that really allows the people who need them to go, yes, that's exactly what I need. I'm so glad I found you, instead of you trying to convince them.
Yeah.
I think marketing in our society is about convincing.
Right.
And that's not what this word is about.
Right. This is about bringing your gifts. Everyone brings their gifts to the market or whatever. And then you share, and it's about, I have this, you have that. That's great. Let's celebrate each other. I really think it's kind of cool. It is, like we said, simple, but it is tricky for a lot of people. So again, let's do the elevator pitch kind of idea. Do a short version, a medium version, a long version.
Explain what an elevator pitch is in case anyone doesn't know.
Well, if you're starting to think about your gifts and stuff, and you see someone, you're standing in line at, let's just say, the coffee shop, if people still do that anymore.
Or you're riding in an elevator.
Yes, or you're in an elevator.
In a very tall building.
And you only have a short amount of time. So if someone says, hey, how are you? And I say, good. What do? You just give a short few seconds, because you're going to get off the elevator. You're going to get your coffee or tea. You're going to be moving on. So that's the short. And then if you have a really tall elevator ride or up and down, or somebody pushes every single button.
There you go.
Right. And then you have the longer one. So you actually can see if there's some, if you can get some resonance, if you can, find your authenticity and what your words are and connect with that person.
Yeah.
And then if you're at a party or an event and you're sitting down and someone's engaged and interested, then you have the longer version.
Yeah.
It's like with us when someone says, what is alchemy?
Yeah. You have to have an answer.
Got to have an answer. So
Yeah.
you have the short, the medium, and the long. I just think that helps. So,
But here's the other thing. I think people can think about those situations like maybe the universe put you two together that day for a
Absolutely.
reason. And so if you don't have to be so shy about those gifts because that person might be looking for exactly what you have to offer.
yeah, maybe the universe had that little bratty kid
Yeah.
push every one of those 82 buttons on the elevator.
Yes.
Just so you could spend 5 or 6 minutes with this person.
Yeah.
Right? Who's to say that wasn't, divine intervention?
Exactly.
Right?
So why would you doubt that? So we suggest, you make the next move to actually write this down.
Write it down.
And we've worked with people on this. It takes several iterations, honestly, to get it right, to get it not be negative or too positive, like you're trying to convince someone. So it's a really delicate balance there to find that version.
I used to do this thing with clients, with people that I work with, and I'd be like, okay, so write down 10 things that you liked about yourself, and they couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Right. And so then I started and I say, okay, write down 10 things that you hate about yourself. And boy, they could do that. Boom, 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 boom.
Wow.
So they do the 10 of the, I think it was hate. I think I used the word dislike. Then I made them crumple it up, throw it away, and then do the ones they like. And it worked out much better.
Wow.
So if you feel like you're like, I don't have really much that, I'm a good listener and that's about all you can get. Think about what you don't like, throw it away, and then look back at all those negative ones and put the contrast of really what you I would almost guarantee you truly are.
And the next step, the advanced homework in this, is after you get this written down, start watching what comes out of your mouth.
Yeah, definitely.
You might be surprised how often you say those negative little
Well,
statements.
that goes into what, if you're a longtime listener, the vigilant mind. I say
Yes.
it over and over and over and over and over.
Yes.
You have to clean up your language. You have to, if you're getting new habits, whether it's physical habits, mental habits, vocabulary habits, you have to be the vigilant mind.
Yeah. And then you can also watch the things you're not saying, but thinking about yourself.
Yes.
But anyway, okay, so
That's
great.
really good. Yeah. So I think that's cool. So let's move on to the next theme. Let's go into the cave, the ghost cave. Let's go. Give us a good little overview about that ghost cave, Lita.
Okay, so this is kind of the crux of all the 13 Ghost Point themes. It's about the heart of the heart, who you truly are in terms of the spirit that came into your physical body and brought life to you. The idea in Taoism is that spirit, meaning your unique spirit, it has a curriculum or a destiny path it wants to walk. And the earth is a crazy place to live. It sometimes has a lot of limitations, and it almost always has a lot of limitations, like gravity.
Hello, right?
So we can't really experience flying, for example. So that means we experience a lot of disappointments when we can't figure out how to follow our destiny's path or fulfill that destiny.
Well, you could do bungee jumping, skydiving.
Yeah.
Indoor skydiving, which
Yeah.
we have done.
Yeah, it was super fun.
I mean, those are flying.
Yeah.
Or you can, fly alchemically.
Yes.
You can fly in your life. So you can
Yes.
fly. You might not always have disappointments.
Right.
Okay. I'm just saying. That's a big word.
But
But the disappointments, they lead to heart pains.
Yes.
And those are the disappointments we're talking about. Those are the disappointments that we just can't let go. We just can't find a way to release them. So guess where we store them? In the cave of our heart. And they become heart pains, which is so much of the work that we do.
yeah. And we like to say they become like big, dusty old couches that are cluttering up that cave space. And really, it's time to donate them to charity. It's like, come on, it's time to redecorate.
We might have to think that analogy, because who wants a dusty old couch?
Nobody, right?
So if you donate it, I don't know. Let's find a way to recycle it. Let's recycle it.
Okay.
I don't know.
All right. Well, maybe somebody wants the couch.
That's right. Let's clean it first.
Yeah,
right. Okay,
for sure.
But sometimes I think people panic and they think, if I get rid of that heart pain or that dusty old couch, I won't remember it. And then it could happen again, or I'll get another dusty old couch, or, they kind of panic a little bit.
Well, that's a good point. There are many reasons, Jay. We hang on to these heart pains. I think the number one reason is people are trying to prevent these bad things from happening again. So they're on the lookout for them in the world for possible situations that might create those heart pains.
And that would be ghost eyes.
Yes.
Right?
Because they're vigilantly looking for circumstances that are similar. So they're constantly trying to remember those bad old events, which are those dusty old couches, those memories. And it's like heavy baggage that you're carrying. It takes a lot of energy to hold all that. And basically, it's robbing us from truly living freely. And that's really what these themes are about in general, the ghost points, freedom. How can you live your life freely? And these memories of heart pains, they even affect your field of energy. We like to call it your heart field. And it's this idea that we're going to talk about in the next podcast that there isn't a field of energy, and that even scientists are saying that we really do have this heart field and they can measure it. It's supposed to extend, I think, 3 feet out from us.
Sure. Especially if you have your heart on your sleeve.
Yeah. And so not only are these heart pains a lot of work to carry around, it's possible that when you have a lot of them, you're subtly projecting your pain to others around you in that 3 feet field. And that's why in the next episode, we're going to be talking about fields of energy, because it relates to this topic of the heart cave, because the heart is such a powerful generator. And some scientists say it's 100 times more powerful than the brain. And so this totally tracks with Chinese medicine, because the term they like to use is heart/mind, meaning that we have some kind of ability to project our heart's feelings out into the world. Sure. Whatever we're thinking and feeling gets projected. So they call it the heart-mind.
Heart-mind connection, maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. And we'll put all that techie, nerdy stuff in the show notes. So don't worry, you're not going to miss out on all that stuff to go down the rabbit hole of research at your own time.
And so what it means to me is, even if you're reluctant to stop carrying around your heart pains, you might feel like you need to hang on to them, but you might be willing to let them go when you realize that it might be affecting your loved ones, especially your children. That field of energy might be negative based on them. Even if you never tell your children about your traumatic experiences, they could be feeling the pain that you're carrying around. So letting go of these big dusty couches is really the best thing you can do for your children.
Yeah, and I'm going to also throw in for your dogs, because when you do dog training, I often say it goes down the leash into the dog.
Oh,
so your fears, your anxieties, your heart stuff it makes the dogs kind of kooky and crazy.
So true.
So again, it's that field that goes out. I like that 3 feet.
Yeah.
All right. So, all those things you just said was great, easy to say.
Yeah.
But in actuality, it can be challenging, right? Because you have to now look around and say, oh, I don't really want to do this to my children or those around me.
Yeah.
I want to really work on myself. So that's really the key. You want to work on yourself. It's about self-cultivation. And so that you're in the right place, because guess what? This is how we help people let go of those heart pains.
Yeah. And in some cases, you might need help from a healer or practitioner, because we have learned that the heart needs to speak. And if you have trauma that you've never told anyone about, part of releasing it is to speak it. And it helps to free the heart. So
that's the first step,
yeah.
right?
Yep.
Awareness,
yes.
and then
yeah.
releasing.
Yeah. And if you're not letting it out through your words, you might need to find someone to talk to, a therapist, a friend, whoever you feel can hear you. And some people need more than that, because the trauma has, really big hooks in you, and they're literally hooked in on a cellular level. Fear does that. So that's why we do these ghost points in person, to help people release those hooks from the actual body. But many of us can work on this theme with our minds, especially if the trauma wasn't too great and it's not super hooked into the body. If you feel like you're able to work with this yourself for homework, you can review the story of your heart pain. And remember, some people really need help to do this, so don't do this alone if it's a very painful memory. But let's say you can review that painful memory and it's not too painful.
Not too dysregulating is the word.
Yeah, don't freak yourself out. You might need help. But if you're able to do that, then it's time to rewrite your autobiography. You can go back in time and imagine a different way it went down that would make you feel better. And really use your imagination. Anything can happen. I always make a joke like you could imagine like a fairy person flies in the window with a purple ray gun to zap the bad guy. If that's what makes you feel better,
like that.
Use your imagination. The purple ray gun.
I'm not sure a fairy is a person. Fairy's a fairy. Yes. Literally a fairy.
Okay, that's true.
Could fly in the window.
That's
and
true.
Zap the person in a good way. Right?
That's true.
All right, so Lita, what is the point of rewriting the story? Let's just go over that for a second.
Yeah.
Because this is about working with your heart protector.
Yeah. Your heart protector writes the stories about what happened in the past because its job is to figure out how to protect you. So it has to come up with a story that makes it all make sense. So when you have the heart pain, they usually the heart protector usually creates a pretty bad story about the lessons you learned, like lessons about how the world isn't safe in some way.
And maybe as a mature, wiser person now in your life, the rewriting can help you realize that the conclusions that your heart protector came up with are no longer relevant. I often say to people, I say, you're not that little kid anymore. Yeah. You're not going to have that same outcome now. So you're never going to be that vulnerable again. And it's not about saying never again. We talk about that in other podcasts. But like, what are you still protecting against? That's something that's not going to happen again in this reality.
Yeah. But remember, this is complex and it takes a lot of time.
So go slow, be gentle, be kind, be loving, and 100% get some professional help if you need it, because this is where you need to start to look at ways that you can go deeper.
Yeah. And also friends, sometimes these things can be done with friends. If it's something you think they can help you with. And remember, this homework needs to first have your willingness. Be honest with yourself. Sincerely, do you want to let this go? Is it your time to let it go? Maybe it's not. And if you feel a lot of resistance to this idea, maybe this isn't where you need to begin. This isn't your time to address this. Work on the resistance first. We like to do this meditation called Releasing Rebellious Chi, which we do have available for free in the Alchemy Learning Center. Rebellious Chi is Chinese medicine's word for resistance. And maybe the first thing is just work on that. Some people, that could take a whole year, just releasing rebellious chi before you can start doing this level of work.
Yeah, I like that, Lita. That's a good point. Just be kind to yourself and honest about your experience and where you are right now. And most people just need a little momentum going and starting to look at that. So I think that that's a really great place to end right there. Just remember, the heart needs to speak.
Yes. And definitely check out.
But are you listening?
Yes.
Right?
Are you listening?
It's way in that cave.
Yeah.
And the heart needs to speak. So
yes.
Let's turn the light on in the cave.
Yes. And definitely check out our next episode on fields of energy and the heart. So that'll be interesting. And we'll continue on this topic.
All right. And go to the farmer's market. Support a local cause.
There you go.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
You've been listening to the Inspired Action Podcast. And you've reached the end. Woohoo! Why not celebrate a little bit and click that subscribe button right there. We love having you with us on this journey and we want it to continue.
You can also rate and review this podcast. And if you have already, thank you so much. We read all reviews and your reviews help other people find this podcast as well. You can also be a part of this podcast yourself by submitting a voice recording message and emailing it to us at lita@inspiredactionpodcast.com or jay@inspiredactionpodcast.com.
And if you want, you can join our Facebook group or follow us on Instagram.
Join us next week for another Inspired Action conversation. And thank you for listening.
Thanks for listening, and remember to hug the dog.